Coming to you live from Big Ten Media Days, Wi-Fi permitting, this team offensively is going to cook this year.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this community. As always, y'all are the most incredible community ever. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. Big Ten Media Days. So we got to talk to Gard, John Blackwell, Nolan Winter, talked about the young players on the team, offensive expectations. Let me know if the Wi-Fi seems to be holding up, audio, video, but we're going to try to make it work here. I'm at one of the podiums, which is super cool. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 to use across the app. Download the app today. All right, let's get into this. Big picture thoughts. I want to go through everybody we're able to talk to. Gard, Nolan Winter, John Blackwell, some of the big picture things that they had to say. Let's start with Gard. First of all, the dude is the easiest guy to root for in the world. Again, like he's kind of a man of the people vibe if you haven't had a chance to talk to him. There was a great moment, and you probably see it on some of the videos that come out where John Blackwell and Nolan Winter are hanging around kind of asking Gard questions like, which player would you not want to babysit your kid on this team? And he's like, I don't know, maybe Grappy. There's just good vibes, and people can dismiss that, but that deals with chemistry. It deals with culture. It deals with connectivity with the players and the people on his staff and this roster. Those things lead to wins. That matters. Being able to relate, what it is it's relating to players, right? It's being able to relate to players, to relate to your locker room, and that's a big deal when the season is several months long. Gard's really good at that. He's involved into that. The staff and this team feels like they're pretty close right now. I think the culture is there. What did Gard talk about with the freshmen? I thought one of the more interesting things he said was expect some of these freshman players to see action today, or to see action this year. Expect this freshman class to be impactful. And it's difficult to start, but a lot of people are very high on Will Garlock and Zach Kinzinger. Both true freshmen, both in-state players. Garlock specifically 7 foot, really athletic. And then Kinzinger, I think, could ever roll off the bench this year as a guy who can come in, glue guy, shoot the ball, microwave scorer. Gard was high on both of those guys. This is a really interesting class coming in. He talked a little bit about the defense. You know, how do you balance the defense and the offense? That's obviously something this group needs to get a little better at this year. And he said, it's never one or the other. So they spent the first 3 practices, I think, just focusing on defense, focusing on being a little longer, or focusing on the rotations, and as John Blackwell said, shutting the water up from the opposing team. This team's going to score this year. This team's going to get a lot of buckets this year. How are they going to defend? How are they going to stop teams? I think that's going to really dictate how far this team can go on the defensive end. One thing that I thought was really interesting, Gard talked about this, Nolan Winter talked about this. I am really excited about this. When you look at the length on this team and the size on this team, it's Blackwell's a big guard. Boyd is a veteran guard. Rhodey's big. Rapp is big. Winter's big. Carrington coming off the bench has size. Janicki has size. I think they're going to be pretty versatile defensively. They're going to potentially switch 1 through 5. I think this roster can do it. I think this lineup can do it. If you have a group of players, especially with the mobility that a guy like Nolan Winter has, if you can switch 1 through 5, if Winter can switch out on a pick and roll and keep a guard out of the lane, that's going to make this defense team more versatile. I think that's a really, really interesting component to what they could do this year. They also mentioned a couple of the wrinkles. I don't want to speculate, and they didn't get into it, but I don't know if that means, again, with some of the size and length that they have, maybe they throw a couple zones at opposing teams. So he did talk defensively a little bit about that. He talked about Brad Davison quite a bit and why it was just such an obvious fit for him to kind of step up into this coaching role. One thing he said, and it kind of stood out to me, was it was a matter of if, or it was a matter of when, not if, that Brad Davison would kind of become a coach and take this journey. He's kind of hardwired for it. Mentioned he's going to be really good on the recruiting trail. Brad Davison is a guy with his personality and his eye for the game. I think that's a good addition to the staff. I've talked about it a couple times. I still think that potentially you need another offensive guy on staff somewhere to just kind of help balance it out. But I think Brad Davidson's going to be a really good addition and add to the staff and this team this year. He talked a little bit about the shooting, said he really likes the combination of skill and size on this roster going all the way down. They're going to be able to create some mismatches there. So I think a really good interview from Gard. It's always important to keep in mind these events and these kind of media days are almost designed to highlight the positive aspects of what's going on. Like that's kind of what they're supposed to do. So you come away from it feeling really good. But I do come away from it feeling really good. I think Greg is excited about the offense. I think he sees the ability to improve the defense through the length and size on this team. And then I think him highlighting those freshmen is something that he's not going to come up here and say these guys can't play, but for him to specifically highlight those guys, I think that's a big deal for the Badgers. All right, let's get into Nolan Winter. What did Nolan Winter have to say? Specifically talked about his role this year. I asked him, how are you going to replace Stephen Crowell? How are you going to kind of be that guy that slides into the middle defensively and on the glass? And he talked a lot about, I got bigger this offseason. I'm stronger. We did it smartly. I think he could be in for a big year. Nolan Winter really highlighted the idea that this season for him is about being a little tougher, a little more consistent, and I think he's going to still be able to space the floor. John Blackwell talked about the competitiveness of practice. He talked about adding a Nick Boyd and a Braden Carrington and how much better that makes the entire team, right? How much that adds to the depth, but also just the practice battles that get everybody better. So I think that was a big part of it. Offensively, they both about the impact Kirk Penny had. I thought that was really interesting. They both talked about the legacy of Kirk Penny. It wasn't just the 2-year thing. They learned a lot, and his legacy is going to kind of live on at Wisconsin in the offense they're going to run. I think both of them and Gard, they all talked about how exciting this offense could be this year. We're going to shoot more threes. I think we're playing faster. These are things that they talked about. You look back to last year, right? How good that offense was, how much fun that offense was at times. It sounds like they're thinking it could be even more this year. More threes, more pace, more tempo. I do think there's a real question. How do you do those things and balance the defensive side of it still, right? You have to be very careful about moving too far in one direction or the other, but the offense is going to cook this year. I think there's 7-8 deep in just shooters. There's veteran players. There's a point guard. I think Blackwell and Winter could both score any given night, 20 a game. I think there's a lot of guys off the bench that could come in and shoot and fill up the box score. John Tonje talked about playing close to the basket, drawing some more fouls, something he learned from John Tonje, who's gone. Blackwell, if he can kind of step into that role as the person that gets to the line, he's going to replace a lot of what John Tonje had. I think this offense could be really good next year, like really, really good. It could be a dynamic offense. Again, how well can they defend? That's going to be one of the biggest questions we have this year. We're going to take a second there, come back and talk specifically about that freshman class and some more X's and O's offense and defense that we kind of picked up on from Media Day. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. And a quick second, as always, to say thank you for tuning in to Locked On Badgers. Today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at SupplyHouse. SupplyHouse is your number one spot if you need to get a project going with over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. The real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from losing projects. It protects your blind side. If you need parts for a project, SupplyHouse has next-day delivery, setting you up like a real point guard. It's all about changing the game. Part Finder, 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trade Master program today. Score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices for sure, and a great dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free. Use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Today's episode also brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel's absolutely amazing. Obviously, NFL's going on, college football's going on, basketball's coming up. We're here on Basketball Media Day. FanDuel is incredible. And listen, you're probably going to want to get in on some Wisconsin Badgers action this year on the basketball court because this team, I think, is going to cook some teams. I think they're going to be great. And right now we're on FanDuel. New customers, a first-time bet, $5 gets you $150 in bonus, or gets you $300 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's come back into this. Let's talk more specifically about that freshman class. How can they help, and who can play this year? There were two players highlighted, I think, across the board, and I've heard them talked about from other places too. If people have been to media, let's start with Zach Kinzinger. I think he plays this year. I've talked about it, and this rotation's deep. It's going to be a struggle to figure out who that 8th man is, that 9th man, that 10th man. Kinzinger, one of the quotes, and this is from, I think it was Nolan Winter or John Blackwell. I'll have to go back and look at it. They said, microwave score, he could drop 30. Like, they didn't say in 2 years he could do it. This isn't me saying this. This is players on the team saying microwave score, he could drop 30. And again, they're talking about something that could happen a year down the road, not happen a year down the road, 2 years down the road. They're talking like this year. And when I was at practice, one of the things that really stood out to me about Kinzinger is, he doesn't look like a freshman at all. He's built, his mannerisms, the way he moves, the way he competes with upperclassmen, the way he navigates on offense, finding space, the little nuances. He looks like a sophomore or junior. He's well built. He's physical. He's got a lightning quick release. All those skills translate. All those translate to the next level. The ability to shoot, spread the court, space the floor. And he comes from a basketball family. I've talked about it a lot. His IQ is really high. He understands defense, passing, spacing, the intangibles. He'll get after somebody. He's kind of a gym rat. I think there's some caning in his game. I really think there's some Bronson caning in his game. I don't think he has the innate playmaking right now that Caning had, but from like a swagger shooting standpoint, I think he's right there, probably a little more consistent of a shooter. And I think the intangibles might play up even a little bit more in a role player, as a role player, kind of year 1, year 2 coming off the bench. So I could see Kinzinger playing right away. Will Garlock is the other guy, again, brought up today, and this has been brought up in practice. When I went to see a practice earlier this year, he's somebody I talked about, and I saw Will twice in high school. I've talked about it. Like, I went and saw him play twice, and I thought, man, the physical tools are there. Like, there's definitely something there for Will, but it might be a year or two. And then I saw him in practice this summer, and I was like, gosh, or this fall, and I'm like, gosh, man, he looks bigger. He looks better than he did in high school. And then you hear people in the program talk about him, palms the ball like it's a Nerf ball. One of the things Nolan Winter said specifically about Will Garlock today, a 7-footer that can jump out of the gym. When was the last time Wisconsin had that? Just that archetype of big man who 7-footer can jump out of the gym. It's been a while. Nolan Winter's actually a very athletic big man, but he's not a true 7-footer. Garlock's a little bigger, a little more physical. He's already pretty developed. And if just this year he can give you 5 to 10 minutes occasionally when you need it, when you're playing at Purdue, when you're playing in Illinois, when you're playing at Michigan State, and you need a little bigger body in there, that could be massive for this team. And I think Garlock could do that this year. I don't think it'll be a consistent every game we're going to get 10 to 10 minutes out of him this year. But I think it might be one of those cases when you need him, and he might be there. I also, when you space out the floor like they're going to space it out this year, and just this gets into my next point of where the offense is going, they're going to space this floor tremendously. In transition, in spacing, shooting threes. Blackwell talked about it. Winter talked about it. Gard talked about it. The shooting, they want to continue evolving this offense into this modern style of basketball. When you space the floor like that, and you stretch out a defense, think of a defense like a rubber band. The more you stretch it out, the more pressure you put on that defense, the more likely it's to break somewhere. And a lot of times that break is right down the lane. And now with Will Garlock, you potentially have a rim running big man that you can throw lobs to. It's a rim threat that they haven't had in a while. It's going to provide a difference to this offense. Listen, everybody listening to this show knows how high I am on Steven Crowell, how big of a Crowell fan I am, and how much they're going to miss him. But he wasn't a rim presence in the sense of he'll slip a pick and roll, slide to the rim, and provide rim pressure. Rim pressure is something I think Will Garlock could potentially do this year because you make it simple for him. Off the pick, you're going to set the pick. You're not going to pop it. And as soon as you set it, you're going to slip it. You're going to roll. You're going to put rim pressure. In transition, you run right to the rim and box out in front of the rim and give somebody, your guards, that big target there, turn around, dunk the ball. He could give them 6 points on the random Big Ten day just off put back dunks and lobs. And that's a big deal as a freshman. It's also a big deal going forward. I think they have their center of the future based on what everybody said. We have to see it on the court for sure. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about a young big man quite this excitedly in a while. Maybe since a Nolan Winter for the Badgers. People are very excited about him. Let's get into the defense because the defense is something that we talked about a lot last year. It maybe wasn't as bad as we made it out to be, but there were moments where you're just going to get a critical stop. The defense this year, when I look across the lineup, and this is something Nolan Winter talked about, and he didn't want to get into details. I don't blame him. But it sounds like, they might have a couple things under the hood. He did say, this is still Wisconsin. We're going to play man-to-man. But it sounded like, reading between the lines, there might be a few things under the hood defensively that they'll be able to throw at teams this year. So just keep an eye on that. Like, put that in the back of your brain, file it away. I think there might be some interesting zone-type looks they might throw at people. But all that aside, the other thing they talked about, and something Greg Gard talked about, is their size across their lineup. And this is a really good point. Too often in basketball, when we say, well, is this team big enough? Do they have size? People just look at the 4 and the 5. Well, how big is their power forward? How big is their center? The Badgers are long across the board. We talk about Boyd. We talk about Blackwell. Rhodey's 6'6", as a small forward. Janicki is 6'6". You look at a guy like Braden Carrington, who's a big 6'4", coming off the bench. You look at Austin Rapp and Nolan Winter, who are big, long, mobile athletes. What that's going to be able to do is, it clogs at passing lanes, but it's also going to make it easier to be switchable, to be versatile defensively, to be a little more seamless. Now, they got to be connected. That takes work. It's never as easy as we're just going to switch now. No, that takes work and practice, and you got to really commit to it. Nolan Winter's going to have to commit to getting on the perimeter and stopping a guard coming off of pick and roll action. But I think they can do it, because I think Blackwell, Rhodey, and Boyd and Carrington, I think they're tough enough. If they get caught on a switch against a bigger player, they're going to be able to battle a little bit. You don't want them buried down there against Purdue, but they're going to be able to battle. And I think our bigs are mobile enough they can hang on the perimeter. That makes you a better defense. It makes you more versatile. It makes you a little more difficult to exploit and find mismatches on. You can get other teams in the late shot clock situations easier. To me, that's going to be one of the keys to the defense this year, is how can they wear down shot clocks by being versatile defensively, by being switchable defensively, by really gumming up actions. They're going to have to be better this year than they were last year. It's something they all talked about. Defensively specifically, John Blackwell talked about at times, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, at times we have to be able to switch off the water of opposing teams. This is a big point of emphasis for us. It's a big focus point for us. And he said specifically, one of my biggest goals this offseason was defense, was getting better in that aspect. So I think they know it. I also think it reflects a bit of a quiet confidence in how good they think their offense is going to be. I think they know their offense is going to show up. I think they know their offense is going to be there. And it's going to come down to how well we defend if we want to be serious. If this team can make a run this year, straight up, period, this team can make a run. And they're going to have to play defense consistently to do it. And I think they realize that, which is why the offseason for Blackwell was, I got to get better defensively. And he does. He has to be a star on both ends of the court. And it was great to hear him talk about that. We have to see it on the court. But they obviously emphasize that. That's a big part of this, because I think they know how good the offense is going to be. I think they know they're going to be able to shoot the ball. I think they know they have multiple playmakers going from Boyd to Blackwell to Rhodey. All of them can pass the ball. I think they know they're going to find mismatches in transition with the way Winter and Rapp can run. They're going to run to threes, by the way. This is something expect to see this Badgers team running to threes this year, shooting threes in transition. Again, John Blackwell talked about we're going to shoot threes intelligently. But they both, the smile on Blackwell's face when we asked them, are you guys going to shoot more threes this year? They're going to shoot more threes this year, guys. And for players and for fans who say, well, live by the three, die by the three, there might be some days where you die by it. But I think they're going to shoot some teams out of the gym as well. All right, we're going to take one more quick second here. We're going to come back. I'm going to give you 5 reasons to be excited about this Wisconsin Badgers basketball team. Let's go. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. And as always, a quick second to say thank you for tuning in to Locked On Badgers. Today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at Mazda. Mazda is absolutely incredible, crafting the absolute top of the line ways to get you from point A to point B. They craft cars for people who do more than simply move, delivering confidence with every single ride, top IIHS safety picks, all-wheel standard in every crossover SUV. This is as consistent as John Blackwell. It's going to get you from the three-point line to the rim every single time, just like Mazda is going to get you from the house to the donut store every single time you want to get there. Like every single player, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode also brought to you by our great friends over at Quo. We've talked about this before. This is open phone. It's become Quo. It is one of the tools that makes an absolute huge difference for business owners by basically taking all those phone calls you might have missed and turning that into a thing of the past. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system, streamlining customer communication. It works through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying 2 phones or relying on a landline. That stuff's obsolete. It's nonsense. Like the swing offense, we've moved away from this, guys. I love how Quo basically lets you share one number and collaborate on calls and text like a shared inbox, so no customer gets left hanging. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo? Formerly Open Phone. Get started for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's quo.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, you can port those over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, let's come back into this. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts in the comment section. Throw those in there as well. And we will come back in and talk a little bit about 5 reasons to be excited about this year's Badgers team. All right, let's get this. And I appreciate everybody for tuning in as always. Thank you for being a part of this community. 5 reasons to be excited about this Badgers team. I think the first one is there's potentially a big 3 here. I think Blackwell and Winter are going to be great this year. I've talked about that. I think both are all Big Ten type-ish players. Now, whether they finish on the first, second, third, honorable mention, I think both have that type of talent. And I think Boyd coming in unlocks each a little bit. He gives you a true point guard, but he's also tough as SOB type of a player on the court. Everybody you talk to about Nick Boyd, his competitive nature, how tough he is, how physical he is, how he challenges players, how he talks, how he communicates, all those verbal and tangible leadership traits that real point guards bring, it's the same as a quarterback. Those are invaluable. Boyd brings that. I think you possibly have a big 3 this year for the Wisconsin Badgers. I'm very excited about Nick Boyd. The second thing to be excited about this year, this offense is going to score, and it is going to score a lot. And barring health, this offense is going to put teams in an absolute blender. You talk about the shooting, the spacing, and then you add the ability to get to the rack from a Nick Boyd play, from John Blackwell. John Blackwell talked about playing in the post a little bit more. Think about maybe inverting him and surrounding him with shooters. He talked about getting to the free throw line more. They want to play faster. They want to get in transition. Nick Boyd is maybe one of the quicker guards we've had in Wisconsin in a while. He will take the ball out of the rim and get down the court quickly off a make or a miss. This offense is going to be a lot of fun. If you want to find maybe one of the biggest reasons to get excited about Badgers basketball this year, look at the offense and enjoy just watching ball movement, shooting, really skilled basketball players finding space. Andrew Rohde as a connector is going to be really solid this year. They're going to get him on the second side, and he's going to, with 14, 15 seconds left in a shot clock as the defense is scrambling, I think he's going to break people down and find secondary shots off that. It's going to be a really fun offense to watch. Third reason to be excited this year, I think those freshmen are going to play. And I think you're going to see glimpses. They're not going to be needed to carry the load this year. I think you're going to see glimpses of a couple future potential all Big Ten-ish type players in Kinzinger and Garlock specifically. And I think those flashes are going to be fun. I think you're going to see Kinzinger coming in some moments, make some big shots, and you're going to see Garlock. I think he's going to catch a couple bodies. I think Garlock's going to yam on a couple people this year. And he's going to make freshman mistakes. Like there's going to be a pick and roll where Garlock just gets left in space and the opposing team gets a dunk out of it, and Gray Guard's going to yell at him, and it's all going to be part of the process. But you're going to see the flashes of the future this year with those two specifically. I'm excited to see that. Next reason to get excited about this Badgers team, I think it's a jump from Blackwell. Blackwell coming off the NBA feedback, coming off an offseason where he said, I'm going to play like my goals defense. I think he knows this is his opportunity to take that next jump. And then this is just my opinion, not taking it from anybody, but I think the goal for him is NBA. I think he's going to showcase that this year. I would be super excited about Blackwell in a new offense, not a new offense, but an offense where it's going to be a different dynamic with Nick Boyd being the primary ball handler. It could be a lot of fun this year. And I think that offense with Blackwell is going to absolutely cook. And then the fifth reason is the Big Ten's legit. This is a really good Big Ten, a bunch of national games. Wisconsin has hype, it has excitement, and I think it's all warranted. I can't wait for this team this year. I'd be excited about the offense, the new players, Nick Boyd, jump from Blackwell. You know I'm high on Winter. I think there's legitimate questions on this team about defensive ability, rebounding, but they're going to outscore a lot of teams. Let's bang some comments out here. Anybody, if you have any comments, let me know. I'm going to see if I can find them. I just had comments here. There was like 11 or 12 of them, and now I don't see any comments. So I apologize, guys. Oh, here we go. Got him. Let's get some comments in here. Rogue says, here we go. Rog said, is it Rog or Rogue? I'm going to say Rog. Is Garlock shaping up to be as good or better than Crowell was when he got to Madison? Man, that's a great question. You're going to put me on the spot because you know I've always been on Stephen Crowell Island. So definitely different. Better or worse, I could say maybe the same tier, but they do it in very different ways. Garlock's never going to be, probably never quite the playmaker that Stephen Crowell was. Although I'll say this, Will Garlock in high school, actually one of the things that impressed me the most about him was his ability to pass, and it was his ability to find open shooters. Garlock's a much better athlete, though. He's a better athlete. He's going to be more fluid and more mobile in the paint. I think this is a guy that definitely can give you rim protection in a way that the Badgers haven't had in a while. A big center that can really cover for the rim and really make it painful for opposing guards to score 2 feet from the bucket. I think he's going to give you that. Will he ever shoot it quite as well as Crowell? Maybe not. I think that's going to be a big question when we start to talk about what's Garlock's ceiling. If he can unlock shooting, his ceiling's an NBA guy. There's not many seven with his mobility and his size as a 7-footer. If he can unlock that shooting aspect, this is an NBA guy. And we had Isaac Wadajo on the show, who's the director of scouting and recruiting for the Badgers, and he talked about it. He said Garlock reminds me of some of the NBA picks I had when I was coaching in Texas. So I think there's a big ceiling there, man. But if he's going to be better than Crowell, he's going to have to develop the shot at least a little bit. But athletically, he's in a different tier. Let's see. Yeah, and he said, you remember how skeptical on how – I remember being skeptical on how long it would take Garlock to adapt to a different defensive scheme. I think this is still a fair question. I don't think we have this answer yet. How is he going to play defense this year? I think it's going to be ups and downs, and it's going to be bumpy here and there, but we haven't answered this one yet. Brian says, interesting that Gard is specifically mentioning a freshman. Remember him doing that for Blackwell. Agreed. And Blackwell's another one who came in ready to play. I've loved Kinzinger since I saw him play. Straight up. Like, I think he's a hooper. He understands ball, and he can shoot. Like, if you do those three things, you're going to play. I do wonder with Kinzinger getting to the rim against Big Ten athletes. That's something I'm going to have to see how and if he's going to be able to do that. But I think at a minimum, he's going to develop as a 3-point shooter, a guy off the bench that can stretch zones and make the right pass and play hard defensively. I don't have a lot of concerns about Kinzinger. Alien Space says Wisconsin, Michigan State will prove the so-called experts wrong. Dennis says plenty of talent. Alien says Boyd could be an all-conference player. All-conference is tough in the Big Ten, right? Because you got 18 teams now. You almost have to come in. Here's the thing. The all-conference teams are like the Pro Bowl teams sometimes, or like the All-Star games sometimes. You almost have to come in and already be on that list to finish on that list. It's hard sometimes to rise up those lists. But I think he's in that tier of difference maker, if that's maybe the best way to put it. I think he's in the tier of players who can make a difference and elevate a team as a point guard. And that's what an all-conference point guard does. Will he get there? I doubt it, just because it's tough in the Big Ten, man. And I think Blackwell might be ahead of him in notoriety, which means they maybe split the vote or maybe you just get Blackwell on the team. But I think he's going to be really, really good. Dennis says people are getting excited for Garlock. I think they should. Now, excited with temperance, right? Excited but temperate. They're still freshmen. I think there's still questions on how he's going to shoot. There's going to be defensive lapses, but the physical skill set's pretty unique. And he looked good this summer when I saw him in practice. Brian, Badgers running an up-tempo spread-out offense. Half the color guys still talk about the swing offense. This is true. We're going to cook some team this year. We're going to hang like 75, 85 on somebody. And one of the announcers is going to be like, look at that swing offense, moving the ball side to side. That's a staple of this program since Bo Ryan came in. And, Greg Gard is still running some of that same stuff, that same old Wisconsin basketball. I guarantee somebody will still say that. And it hasn't been swing offense in a while. We know that. Are there still elements of it at times? Yes. Does Gard still have it in his back pocket if he wants to get a specific set? Sure. It is interesting this year. You could run a version of it and invert. When I say invert, I mean bring the guard to the post. You could run a version of the swing, pull another big out, and then invert Blackwell on kind of that down screen and get him in the post that way. So you can see flavors of the swing still, but yeah, I agree. Let's keep going here. Dennis says 7-foot gazelle. I wouldn't call him a gazelle, but he's not a Yugo either, right? Like what's in between those two? Like a hippo? Oh gosh, I have no idea. He's pretty mobile for a 7-footer. I did not just call him a hippo. Scratch that. He's pretty mobile for a 7-footer though. I like him. Rog asks, I wonder how the international guys end up factoring into the rotation. I didn't talk about Hayden Jones much today. Hayden is a guy that a couple guys were really high on, talked about the size, the shooting ability. Bialuskis is a guy that Greg Gard mentioned for a little bit as well. I think both could factor into the rotation as well, although I kind of think Hayden might be a year off. Just my gut. This is a deep team. It's going to be hard to crack this rotation, and I've already said that Kins and Garlock, I think, make it. And if that's the case, I don't know if there's room for many other spots because I think Gray's going to play. Carrington's in that mix. You have Janicki still, plus the starting 5. What is that, like 10 guys? It's not going to be 10 deep. So I already realized in my head have created a deeper rotation than it will be. So I'm going to have to pare that back a little bit. Let's see. Alien says, I think Gray was an underrated ad from Temple. Yeah, I didn't hear much of Gray today, but specifically I didn't ask about him either. So that's probably on me. Certainly his size, 6'8", some experience. He has the ability to draw he has the ability to draw fouls as well, which is something that this team lost a lot of Tanjay. When that's one of the big things he did last year offensively was draw fouls. It's going to be interesting. I'm not sure. Gray to me feels like a guy who could get inconsistent minutes. Like some games, maybe 10, 15, and some games he might be a DNP. But I'm not sure, and I didn't ask about him today. That's probably on me. All right, we're going to wrap it up there on Wisconsin. Appreciate every single one of you live from Big Ten Media Days. How cool is this? Let me turn this camera around so you guys can kind of see what's going on here. Okay. Somewhere out in that mix is some more Badger Media folks, great folks, and obviously on Wisconsin. We will definitely talk later. A bunch more content coming up. Iowa this weekend. I hope to see everybody at our Locked On Iowa meetup. It would be absolutely insane. Talk later on Wisconsin. Thank you so much.